Welcome to part 7 of my... I mean, if you're starting with part 7, I don't really know what you're doing. So anyway, I'm giving a top level view of my workflow. I'm making a zombie with a propane tank. And what am I doing this time? What did I do the last time? Right, texturing. It's time for the low poly model. Anyway, if you want to support these kinds of videos, you can find me on Patreon. Link in the description. And without, well, a little further, I suppose. How long is this? And anytime now. Part 7. Low poly modeling. Or remeshing, I guess. And I want to stress this again. I mentioned it in the last video. This is the very quick and dirty way of doing it. My goal is just to get this thing into Unity for my project, and it's a enemy that will charge you, then go boom. So I'm not too worried about proper topology and loop flows and all that jazz. It's if you're making a character, a player character, or some key asset, or if you're doing anything proper that's supposed to be on the screen more than boom, then this is not the way to do it. I'm gonna stress that again. Don't do this. It's not a good idea for several reasons. I have another project already recorded, and in that project I'll go through a proper retopology workflow. But for now, what I'm essentially doing is very similar to my remeshing mesh cleanup video. I'm simply pushing it further. I'm doing decimates, and well, for the pants here, I had the belt buckle, the belt, and the pants as separate meshes, but now it's time to start merging these meshes. So what I did first was just combining all of them in Blender. For me, it's Control J, I think, to join them. Just search for join meshes, and what I did after that is a remesh, which allows me to combine all of these meshes into a single mesh. Since the belt, I made sure that the belt was clipping into the pants, meaning that there's an overlap. So when I do a remesh, I get a single mesh with a single sort of outer shell, and this is what you want for the low poly models. After that, I just decimate it a lot, and right now I think I'm working on the propane tank. So similar thing here. I merged all the different parts. I did a remesh, and then I'm doing a decimate. And the key thing to keep in mind here is, you see, I keep looking at the top part, that you want to decimate it to a point where the silhouette is intact. So when you're baking a high poly model to a low poly model, it's important that they match as closely as possible their silhouette. So push the decimate as far as you can go, and in general it's a good idea to keep in mind what the model will be used for, in what context, and how close the player will be to it, and how fast it will be moving, and all that stuff. If you want to, as much as possible, optimize everything. And for this model, I could have pushed it further, actually. It's relatively high poly at, I think it is a bit below 17k triangles. So, but while I'm talking about doing a quick and dirty low poly model, and I'm not worried about deformation and loops and such, I still wanted to add a bit more detail than usual and do something a little more high fidelity than usual. I I have this love for low poly, pixelated, old school sort of looking things. But for this project, I decided to push it a little further, and it allowed me to make this tutorial series and add a little more detail and depth to it. And well, when you're decimating things pretty hard, you're gonna have some small issues in there. You just saw me fix a problem area where a edge had ended up being underneath other edges. So yeah, here's another one. You see how I'm going over the model? I'm looking for areas where the shading is off. Like here's not quite a serious one, but when I find them, I just go in and rotate those edges. And this, when you're decimating this hard, you can choose for yourself if you wanna just get rid of the complete UV unwrap all the seams, because decimating it is gonna lead to this very jaggedly looking and kinda messy UV island. So I tend to just get rid of it and do a second UV unwrap for the low poly model. It's easier and it's pretty quick to unwrap these low poly models, since, well, simply put, you're not dealing with as many triangles. Here's another technique that I'm using. I would go in and find areas where there's not really that much happening, and also in here specifically, it's the back of the mutant. You're not gonna see much of that. So I take those areas and decimate them specifically. I simply select all the faces I'm interested in and go to the vertice group tab in Blender and assign them to here you can see it, to a vertice group and call it like decimate me or whatever. And then when I'm doing the decimation, I can select a specific vertice group that doesn't roll off the tongue exactly, does it? And yeah, decimate only that specific area. Like here, the inside of the mouth, the throat of the mutant. I don't need much detail at all there, so I can get a lot of triangles decimated. And yeah, you can also see that I'm sticking mainly for the arms. I avoid the areas around the elbows and the wrists. I want to keep as much geometry as possible there, since especially with these sort of quick and dirty low poly decimate type models, you make sure to keep plenty of geometry around all the joints, the shoulders, the elbows, the knees, the ankles, the hip, and yeah, all of that stuff, because when you're animating, you need a bit of geometry in order for the deformation to look convincing and don't start doing a lot of weird clipping and stuff like that. Something that's a little bit unique for this project is that the upper torso, I mean the rib cage in general, is gonna be pretty stiff on a character or creature. It's not really bending that much, but with the added propane tank, which is supposed to be completely stiff, any areas around the tank will by extension also be pretty much stiff. I make sure to keep a bit of geometry around the neck and the head so that the head can move around a bit, but besides that I can decimate pretty ruthlessly around the the tank itself. But yeah, I think that covers most of what you need to know in order to do one of these sort of quick, easy low poly models. Besides that, yeah, I don't know if there's much I can add. Just keep practicing, keep making these projects, and keep bringing them into the target environment. If it's Unity or Unreal or whatever, I don't care. But keep getting them in there, keep trying them in use cases and so on, and see what works and what doesn't, and what you need to keep in mind. And it's gonna be a lot about the things that I've mentioned. You need a certain amount of geometry around the areas that will deform. The stiffer areas and low detail areas don't need as much geometry at all. Optimize as far as you can. Well optimized models means you can use more models, simply put, and you can run your projects on more systems as well. And I suppose that's really a big part of developing assets for games. I've worked on assets for so many different platforms, consoles, PC, mobile. Mobile is pretty interesting. That's an area where I really get to take advantage of my love for super optimized low poly models and textures, and it's really fun to see how far you can push something. Creating like a vehicle from a couple hundred triangles or stuff like that can be really fun. And this model I'm working on here is really one of my first experiments with a bit more modern standards when it comes to triangle counts and so on. It's been growing so fast the last couple of years or decade. It's it's pretty crazy how many triangles you can throw at real-time assets these days. This here being like 16,000 triangles, that would be a lead character, a player character, I don't know, 5-10 years ago. Not one of these sort of disposable enemy models. So yeah, I mean, I remember spending a lot of time lurking on the Polycount forums. I can recommend them as a resource to learn more about these sort of things. And they have this great sticky thread they've had for I don't know how many years, low poly modeling, and they changed it a couple of years ago, I think, but further back the poly limit was like 1,000 triangles, so you were encouraged to post only things below 1,000 triangles, and people can do some amazing things with that. There's some really cool fun ways of optimizing things for the sort of PlayStation 2 era or mobile. I mean, even mobile phones these days can handle so much, it's crazy. But yeah, I love things like creating a car and only using 2 triangles for a wheel. you just have this sort of transparent PNG of a wheel mapped on a quad, pretty much. And you can get away with a lot of things, but yeah, I think that's another video. So, as usual, thanks so much for watching and listen to me rant about all these things. And yeah, take care of yourself in these strange times.